All right. This is an article I want us to read, though, and it is written by Paul Tassi here, who plays a lot of Destiny and has a lot of experience with live service games, and we as well play a lot of live service games. But live service delirium is something publishers need to self-reflect on quickly. There's a new report of questionable validity being circulated that 500 studios, or 95% of those surveyed, are working on live service games in some form. That form may be loose, as it is considered live games anything with frequent ongoing updates, but even if those numbers are skewed, yes, it's clearly a trend as stated by those running the likes of Sony, Warner Brothers, and countless other studios. The idea in theory is that one-off single-player games might be able to sell well, but they have no ongoing revenue after the fact, and with big budgets may barely break even or still even lose money. But it's becoming clear that there may be no faster way to lose money than to go all in on live service, as depending on the genre, even the successful ones are burning through cash and players at this point. I bring this up, of course, mainly because of the launch of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, a game that appears to be selling relatively poor. Judging by the truly abysmal 12,000 launch day player count on Steam, albeit we'll need more data to be sure, it is easy to see how the idea that the game was live service in the first place was a hard sell, much more so than another standard standalone superhero game from the Arkham creators would have been. Meanwhile, also within Warner Brothers, we just had the release of Hogwarts Legacy, which was the first non-Rockstar game to outsell Call of Duty in a given year in a decade, and now it has 25 million in sales. It is insane. Now, granted, let's be clear about this too, though. I had people that never game hitting me up about Hogwarts Legacy. I mean, they're just like Hogwarts fan, Harry Potter fans, and that is a huge market, right? And so Hogwarts Legacy really presented all the things right for someone that wanted to sink their teeth into an actual game that makes you feel like you're at Hogwarts. But it is something that goes in the polar opposite direction of what Warner Brothers is doing here. You know, you've got what they've invested in was this live service game, and then you've got this single player experience, which was Hogwarts Legacy. But then you got the other games that Rocksteady has done before that were single player driven that did phenomenal as well. More on our Suicide Squad review, by the way. We have like an hour long review of Suicide Squad. And yet, when pressed about its future video game plans, Warner Brothers CEO David Zaslav can only talk about live games, recurrent revenue, and ongoing engagement. But at a certain point, in an effort to print money for long periods of time, you're going to end up lighting it on fire. Suicide Squad is the best example of this. A Rocksteady Superman game were one to exist probably could have easily sold 15 million copies. Here, you have to convince people to pay $70 for a Suicide Squad game, a concept you cooked up so it could function as a looter shooter in the first place. Then create a story that has no real ending and must feed into the live content. Then as you're making the game and for an indefinite period of time after, you have to make other content, new characters, mission, loot, etc. And in this case, you're not even selling that content. You're selling cosmetics in the shop and cosmetic battle passes each season. It's a recipe for making both A game nobody asked for in the first place, and B, something that is massively expensive to both produce and attempt to sustain. And if it fails to launch, well, which seems to be the case with Suicide Squad, you have already committed to at least an extra year of content for something that is almost certainly not salvageable as a live game. This live service delirium is making some studios act wildly out of character. Sony pushing its studios so hard toward live service, it blew up spectacularly with Naughty Dog's The Last of Us factions being canceled, years of works and millions of dollars wasted, and caused them to literally put out a statement saying they would remain a single-player studio, as if live service was some sort of disease they just expelled from their body. Well, most notably, Bungie played it and said that it wasn't up to snuff, and then they canned it. But then, you know, right after that, then all of Bungie and Destiny's woes came out about their missed revenue projections. Now, it's wild to me that a place like Warner Brothers looks at a game like Hogwarts Legacy, one of the most successful non-sequel game launches of all time, as a single-player, microtransaction-free experience and goes, but yes, we should make more games in the Suicide Squad model. Then you can shift your gaze a few degrees to look at the most explosively popular game of this year, Palworld, a game that, yes, is live with online multiplayer and future updates, but there are no seasons, no microtransactions. You can easily play solo and have a great time. And it has gone 19 million players in 2 weeks with a budget 2% the size of AAA blockbusters. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that in just a moment. Palworld's an anomaly, though. You know what I mean? Is Palworld the next Minecraft? I think it is, dude. I think it is. I mean, you saw how explosive Minecraft was. I would say, you know, at some point I need to make a video of like most defining games of our times, like the games that really shifted things. I would put Minecraft up there as one of those games that really shifted things. Fortnite shifted things. Halo shifted things. And so there are certain games that just shifted things and defined their generations. But back on this topic here too, about live service games. It just reminds me of whenever the MMORPG bust happened. I remember 2 decades ago, it was like everybody was suddenly making an MMORPG. MMORPGs were everywhere. Everybody wanted the next WoW. Everybody wanted to push out the next World of Warcraft. And MMORPGs were going out one after another. And let me just say, as someone who tried a lot of them, dude, 95% of those MMORPGs were garbage. So many garbage. I remember picking up MMORPGs. There was one I picked up in 2010, 2011. I can't remember the name of it. But let me tell you how lazy it got. It was a full-blown MMORPG, but you didn't even have to walk to the quests. You would click the quest at the top left-hand screen, like your journal entry. You would click it, and your character would auto-walk there. If it was on the other side of the map, double-click, character walk it. Go take a shot, come back, characters there turning in the quest items for you. But you had the MMORPG bubble, and then we had the mobile game bubble. I mean, how many Raid Shadow Legend ads did you guys see? Right? They were left and right. Look, we did a lot of them. You know what I mean? We played Raid Shadow Legends, and it was a fun enough game. But how many Raid Shadow Legend type games came out in like a span of like 5 years? I mean, they were just all over the place. The fact that like live service is what's being pushed now, I think the reality is it always existed. Live service always existed in some way. It's changed its formula ever so often. Yeah, it's unfortunate, because I know some of us want that single player God of War experience for a ton of games, you know, and not that Suicide Squad couldn't have presented that to us. But live service games, man, they are very much hit or miss. I'd rather play a sub to a game rather than have pay to win elements. I mean, at the end of the day, nothing about Suicide Squad is pay to win. You know, that's the example being used in this article. Nothing about it is pay to win. It's all and all the seasons are free. It's just got a microtransaction store with cosmetics, which is something I always wanted in Destiny. Imagine if seasons in Destiny were free and the Eververse paid for all that stuff. That would be amazing. I think you would have so many reoccurring players. All right, let's continue. It feels to me like the answer to expensive single player games is not to chase after live service, but to figure out how to make them less expensive, but still fun enough to sell. Throwing your lot in with live services is like playing Squid Game with the rest of the industry. You may have 500 attempts, but because of the you must commit to and keep paying for this for months for years concept, only a scarce few will succeed and almost all will crash and burn. It's much easier for players to commit to a single player game you play over a few weeks or a month and then move on. And even those, when longer and requiring more playtime, are still potentially massive hits like Baldur's Gate 3, easy Game of the Year winner, and a largely single player game still putting up hundreds of thousands of players daily on Steam when it was released in August. Yeah, but again, anomalies. Some of the games examples being thrown in here were Baldur's Gate 3, which was Game of the Year, and Power World, which might even be Game of the Year for this year. Now, making any video game is hard. Making a live service game is becoming more like a death sentence in terms of investment. This is a dollars and cents thing. Companies have seen a few select live games do very well and think all their IP can now be turned into that. But they can't. The industry won't sustain it. The players won't tolerate it. I would say this bubble is bursting, but that already happened. Corpses of Anthem, Avengers, Godfall, Outriders, Redfall weren't enough to say that Suicide Squad would fail. We've been doing this for years and almost no one is making lightning strike here. Make good games. You cannot force players to like something or force an unrelated genre to fit into being a live service. It won't work. It hasn't worked. How many smash hit standalone games do we need to see? And how many dead live services must we amass before publishers get the message? All right, let me just say this about these games being mentioned here. If Anthem, Avengers, Godfall, Outriders, or Redfall were a single-player experience, a story-driven single-player game, outside of Anthem, I wouldn't have played them. I mean, that's essentially what Godfall was too. There was some elements of Godfall that was really intriguing, but it just didn't nail rule design. Its story was just strange with the brothers. Right? Visually, the game was beautiful. I mean, it was a gorgeous game. And it even had the Horde mode on it too. Avengers, though, was just terrible in every single way. Outriders, I know some of you guys liked Outriders, but there was just nothing about Outriders I liked. And Anthem had good bones, but BioWare EA didn't have the balls to stick with it. I don't think it's just not going to stop. How many pharmaceutical companies have people working nonstop around the clock making that next pharmaceutical product? Majority of them will fail. Majority of them will fail. Majority of them will be shit. Majority of them will be marginal. But all they need is that one. That fucking one that pops off. That one Viagra that changes everything. And everybody's hard. And that's the mindset that these companies have. Just to pull our heads around this though. Yes, I would love for more single player games, I suppose. I'm also not completely against live service games if monetization isn't the focal point, which I know that's always the focal point for live service games. But do I like a game that continues to grow and build and give me content and entertainment for years to come? Yeah, man, I'm an old school RuneScape player. I mean, the first time I picked that game up was back in 2006. I loved it. I loved the game. The world just kept getting larger and larger. And dude, I still remember the day I became a member in RuneScape, which opened up the entire world at that time in RuneScape. And it was amazing. I'm not against paying for good games and continually paying for good games. I just want the games to be good.
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.